To the war in Gaza now, and Egyptian and Qatari mediators have put forward new proposals to revive ceasefire talks. That's according to a senior Palestinian official speaking to the BBC. There's been widespread condemnation of Israel's proposed plan to expand the war by taking over Gaza City. The United Nations Security Council is to meet later to discuss the Israeli situation. Meanwhile, at least 38 people have been killed as a result of Israeli military activity in the past 24 hours. That's according to the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry. A spokesperson said many were killed by Israeli troops while waiting to collect aid. Israel, though, has not yet commented. Meanwhile, in Israel, further protests have been taking place. These are pictures from Tel Aviv. They show Israeli protesters marching to military headquarters, demanding the immediate return of hostages. Well, let's speak to our correspondent now, John Donison, who's in Jerusalem. First of all, John, what can you tell us about these new proposals that mediators are putting forward for ceasefire talks?
Well, I do think that in the coming days and weeks, you're going to see a renewed push for diplomacy, because this plan that Prime Minister Netanyahu has authorised, his government has authorised, to conquer Gaza City and possibly take full control of the Gaza Strip, well, it's not really going to come into effect for 2 months. So I guess the optimists, if you like, are saying, well, look, this is a way of putting pressure on Hamas. Will Hamas make greater concessions? And as you say, we've got the Egyptians, the Qataris, who've been mediating these talks for months now, are apparently coming forward with a new deal. But the key thing to remember is we had a deal back in January. That deal was orchestrated by President Biden and President Trump. All parties signed up to it. Hostages were being released. Palestinian prisoners were being exchanged as part one of that deal. But basically, the Israelis pulled out of that deal at phase 2 because they weren't prepared to end the war. Now, I don't know what's in the minds of Hamas leaders at the moment, but their position has always been they will give back the hostages. They've already agreed to give back all the hostages, but they want Israeli troops to fully withdraw from Gaza, and they want a permanent end to the war. And up to this point, that is something the Israelis have not been prepared to do, because they say they need to go in and finish Hamas off.
Israeli plans at the moment are quite the opposite, aren't they, with that stepping up of its military campaign to take over now Gaza City. I'm interested to know what you're able to gauge about the internal divisions in Israel about this plan. How widespread have the protests become?
Well, the protests are ongoing. We had thousands of people in Tel Aviv last night. You saw the pictures. There were protests here in Jerusalem, a bit smaller, but they've been going on for months. Now, you're right. Israel is divided on this. There is a large swathe of the population. There is a large swathe of the military, including the chief of staff, who is not convinced about this plan to conquer Gaza City, and certainly not to take full control and occupy the Gaza Strip. But he said he's prepared to go along with it for now. So the politicians are divided. The opposition is totally against this plan. Much of the public is. But at the moment, the Prime Minister's coalition is staying together. And much of that depends on persuading the right-wing members of that coalition, who have said they will quit the government if the war ends, persuading them that the war's not over yet.
All right, John Donison there in Jerusalem. Thanks for the explanation. Let's speak to Sharone Lifschitz. Her parents were taken hostage on October the 7th. Her mother was one of the first to be released, but her father was killed and his body was returned earlier this year. Sharone, thank you very much for joining us. For somebody like yourselves, the families of hostages who understand what it's like to be going through this, can you just explain for people watching why there's been this anger about Israel's plan now to expand that military campaign and take over Gaza City?
Well, obviously, we want our loved ones back home. We do not want this war. We want this war to end, for a comprehensive deal to take place. A partial deal has just collapsed. And for the family of the hostages, this is day 674 or 64. No, 74. It's an awful long time. Their loved ones are in dreadful condition, and we need them back home. And only a comprehensive deal ending the war will make that possible.
What are the fears for families then if the Israeli military are taking over Gaza City and potentially then taking over and occupying the entirety of Gaza?
The fear is for the very life of our loved ones, the continuing devastation in Gaza. But from our perspective, there are people, live hostages. We know from last year and from hostages that came back that as soon as the army advances, they are very likely the captors to just put a bullet through their head, as they did last year when the army drew close on 2 occasions, each time killing several hostages. So these are not kind of threat or ideas. This is concrete evidence that when the army approaches, it causes the captor to kill the hostages. Therefore, Israel, or the government of Israel, against the wish of the majority of Israelis, is talking about going into Gaza City. It's talking about sacrificing the hostages. This is horrific to everyone.
We're just seeing some pictures there, Sharone, of you and your parents. To what extent do you think the Israeli government is listening to families of hostages and taking that into account when they're making these decisions about the military action?
I don't think they do. I think they really want to preserve their coalition. They want to therefore pacify the extremists within the coalition. This is not listening to the hostage family. Hostage families quite overwhelmingly have been asking to end this war together again, I repeat, with the majority of Israeli population. There is quite a consensus that want to end the war, draw out of Gaza, knowing that this is the only way to release the hostages.
How do you think then the Israeli government can get the balance right between dealing with the threat that they believe is posed by Hamas and getting the hostages safely released?
Only through really negotiating the day after, really strengthening the involvement of moderate fraction within the Palestinians, and support that with other Arab moderate states, and building an alternative for Gaza. Without an alternative for Gaza, we are stuck with Hamas. The only way to truly get rid of Hamas is a comprehensive deal that deals bravely and boldly with what needs to take place in order for Hamas to have nothing to do with the governing of Gaza. This is a terrorist organization. They have been shown themselves to be horrific to us and to their own population. They are ready to sacrifice the population. They are ready to do all it takes to reach jihad, to reach complete jihad. These are fanatics. And I think that all of us that do not believe in fundamentalism, jihadism, messianism, we must work together to strengthen and bring about the governing of moderate forces.
Hamas, of course, would say they're fighting against the oppression from Israel. But let me ask you something a bit more personal, Sharone. Your mother and father went through this terrible ordeal. Your mother survived. I mean, how is she now, having been in that awful situation, I believe, experiencing the tunnels that hostages were kept in and having been freed from that? How is she?
She is, on one hand, she's very full of life. She really values being out and having a life back, albeit she lost so much, so many friends, very traumatized community, my father. On the other hand, when she heard that they go back into Gaza, you can see it in her eyes. She just goes straight back to the tunnels. She's there with this fear none of us can really understand. The fact that you are being held by someone else who is ready to murder you at any point. This I see in many of the hostages that return. We are told that by many of the hostages, they were told that so long as there are hostages there, none of them can just move on. None of them can really recover. They're partially still held in the tunnels with those who are there now.
She met members of Hamas when they were her captors, didn't she? I think some even very senior members of Hamas. Does that give her any, I suppose, greater insight or understanding into the Hamas position or the mindset, that Israel is fighting against?
I think all of us understand the mindset of people that put jihad and put ideas about land and conquering and destroying other people above the well-being of all. I think my mom can recognize it when she sees it. She lived next to that border for 65 years. She has friends from Gaza. She knows not all of them are the same. She's also feeling a huge betrayal by the people of Gaza. All of these things happen together. The question is, how do we now get rid of this horrific terrorist organization and bring about moderate people? I do believe that they exist very much so, and I know many of them. And we start giving the people of the region, both in Gaza and around in Israel, a chance of building life again.
I just wonder whether you think how close we've got to a situation where the Israeli government cannot be seen, or the more ardent members of the Israeli government cannot be seen to be giving in to Hamas's demands. And therefore, there is this barrier to whoever getting the hostages released and the stalemate that we've seen over recent months.
I think that they are a very tiny minority in Israel, the people that want to conquer Gaza now, and that they are holding the prime minister because they have that power over him. And I think that he is scrupulous. He's ready to do all it takes to stay in power. And so our loved ones are between these amazingly I think it's a tragedy of both the Israelis and of the Palestinians that they are being ruled at the moment by people that care more about their power, staying in power, and their vision of the world prevailing than looking after their population. I do not compare Hamas to the Israeli government in any way, but I cannot see a future without exchanging both the Israeli government and Hamas.
And just finally, we saw some terrible images of the remaining hostages released recently, starving images of them. From your mother's perspective, having been in somewhat of that situation, I mean, how does one keep going in that situation? What is the mindset for somebody who is a hostage and is trying to survive?
My mom was there for 17 days. She didn't feel she could last 20. Her health was really, really bad. She's very elderly. We hear also from other hostages that survived there for almost 500 days how tough it is. We can all imagine what it's like to be in the tunnel. But I cannot imagine the loneliness. I cannot imagine what it's like when Gadi Moses tell me that there was not one gestures of kindness that he experienced in all the days he was in Gaza. And my mom did experience some gestures of kindness, and it is through kindness and gestures of kindness that we can build a better world.
For family members of those hostages who are still in captivity, for some of those who are still alive, what support or help have you been able to give them? And does your mother also have contact with family members of hostages? And what's that relationship like for people still very much going through this?
Well, I think we are all holding them together as we were held and still held in the many days we were waiting for my dad. You can't do it alone. You need the love of other people. You need the support of other people to carry you through. My mom has been incredibly supportive of other hostages and their families, and she's like a great mother figure to so many people. And her strength and determination to continue also is a source of a lot of light and determination to live a life that is just and kind, and push and advocate and fight in any way possible for the return of these hostages, but also for a world in which all of us can live, which we don't lose our most loved ones for such horrific circumstances.
I mean, what hope is there of still having hostages released alive? And how is that hope, being kept alive day after day with such a long stalemate now in what seems to be between the talks in terms of a ceasefire and releasing more hostages, do you think?
You don't give up on your loved ones. You don't give up on them. There's no way, we wake up in the morning and we are with them, and we go to bed at night and we are with them. They are our children, our brothers. You can't just say they are just 20. It's horrific to hear people just giving up on, it's like being buried alive. I cannot understand how anybody can imagine carrying on with life as normal so long as that's happening. And we know that they're being starved, not because Hamas is lacking food. Hamas has a lot of food. It's a decision, and it's a very ruthless decision, the same as the ruthless decision the Hamas is making also towards its own population. It's a very, very manipulative, destructive organization. I know the mothers of many of the hostages. I carry their children as my children. What can I say?
Just finally, could you give us your sense on how much of a division there is among the public in Israel over the support that there is to expand the military operation in Gaza City, and the people who are opposed to it? Because there are two different sides to this. There's a spectrum of opinion, isn't there? Just briefly for us.
Yes, Israel is a divided society like many other societies, but essentially I think the majority do not want to conquer Gaza. There is a lot of there's a lot of very nasty and divisive talk being made, and there's a lot of people who
Sharone, we're going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time, but we really appreciate you speaking to us. Sharone Lifschitz there, whose parents were taken hostage on October the 7th. You're with BBC News.